Welcome back to another edition of the Season in Review series where I take one team and delve into the 2024 season, how it went. I grade every single position on the field. I give my highs and lows of the season, and at the end of the video I give some improvements that I think can be made within reason for said team. And today's highlight team is the Alabama Crimson Tide, their first year without legendary head coach Nick Saban. They went 9-4, losing in the bowl game, narrowly missing the college football playoff. So what's up, everyone? This is a really fun episode. Thank you for tuning in. And without further ado, let's just dive right in right now. Okay, before we get into anything else, I would like to give my overall thoughts on the season for the Crimson Tide. My first thought is it is time for Jalen Milroe to leave. It's been fun. He's, given Bama his all, but it's time for him to leave. He wasn't taking them to a national championship. It was very apparent that they were not going to be able to work with him as quarterback any longer. So it's time to move on for him. I'm sure that Milroe's going to do very solid at the NFL, either as a starter or a backup. And I'm sure Bama's replacement is going to be even better than Milroe was, because Milroe let them down in several key games, especially that Michigan one. I mean, that one's the most recent memory, so that's very easy to pick up on. But I mean, all those other games where they lost and they really shouldn't have, it was really Jalen Milroe's fault the whole time. I think that people can get by with that. And then my second point, DeBoer ain't Saban. He really ain't. I mean, it's very hard to go from the best football coach in all of all time. I think he's probably the best football coach in all time, not just college football. It's hard to go from that to a very good head coach. Like the Bama football, this is what very good coaching looks like with Kalen DeBoer. He is a really good head coach, but he's not Saban. So you're not going to go 12-0 every year. You're not going to go 15-1 every year, and flip flop make winning the national championship and making the national championship. That's not really going to happen anymore. Sorry. So you have to deal with that. The people calling for DeBoer's head really are insane. The way he performed in that first year, he's a very good head coach. I mean, unless you're going to go out there and hire Dan Lanning or Kirby Smart to be your head coach, you really aren't going to get much better than DeBoer. DeBoer, in my opinion, is probably a top 15, top 10 head coach. Another video that's coming out, by the way. So, it's one of those things where it's like, guys, be quiet. He's doing a fine enough job, and he'll continue. This is year one. 9-4 was year one. What's year two going to look like? 10, 11 wins? Maybe 12? Maybe a college football playoff appearance? I don't know. We'll have to see. And then they took themselves out of the playoff via the Vandy and Oklahoma losses. I'm sorry, you cannot lose by that much to Oklahoma and expect to be in the college football playoff. Guess who didn't lose to average teams by 21 points? SMU didn't. Indiana sure didn't. It's all about your resume, man. We're not power rating you guys into the college football playoff. So I just never got that. And then my point even gets more validated when you factor in the Michigan loss. So that's my overall thoughts on the season. But overall, it was a good season. I just want to stress that. Okay, now it's time to get to the player position. What you guys have been waiting for, probably one of the more exciting segments on the show. We divided up into two parts, the offense and the defense, and then overall at the very end. So the offense coaching was a B. I thought it could have been a lot better than it was because Kalen DeBoer, as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller, his ceiling's through the roof. He's one of the best offensive minds in college football, probably one of the most underrated football minds, offensive minded head coaches in the league. And I just kind of expected a lot better from him this season. So I gave it a B grade. Quarterback is a B grade as well. Jalen Milroe did shine at times, but he was way too inconsistent for me to go higher than a B with this one here. He didn't throw for 3,000 yards. He threw for 2,844 yards with a 64 completion percentage. Again, very mid numbers. Yeah, he did lead the team in rushing with 726 yards and 20 touchdowns. So does that make him more of a running back or a quarterback? You tell me. Obviously, I'm joking around. He's a quarterback, but those rushing numbers definitely do increase his stock as a quarterback. So I think that a B grade is very appropriate here. At running back, we have B plus. Jam Miller and Justice Haynes were very good as running backs for the Crimson Tide. If you average them together, they have over 1,100 yards on the ground this season. Excuse me. But gotta put it in past tense, and then a combined total of 14 touchdowns. Jam Miller was edged out Haynes, having 664 yards compared to Haynes' 448 yards. So I think that the running backs were the rushing attack in general was one of the main reasons why they won the amount of games that they did. So I thought that that was very good as well. And then when it comes to receivers, I gave it an A minus. Ryan Williams, one of the best up and coming receivers. Everyone knows about him. He went for 865 yards with 8 touchdowns. Obviously, the freak athlete that everyone knows. His ceilings, Devonta Smith, Heisman, guy that no one can tackle, but he has to work on his route running and hands a little bit more. Obviously, the speed is there. You can't really teach speed, and he certainly has that going toward him. And he's a burner. He's got all the juke moves. He's doing everything. But I think he still has stuff to work on. So I think that he's a very good receiver. Jeremy Bernard was a very good receiver as well. Kobe Prentice was up there. Kendrick Law did some good stuff. So I think that this wide receiver room was an A minus. At tight end, it was kind of a tight end by committee type of thing. You had guys like C.J. Dupree who led the way in receiving yards for tight ends. Josh Cuevas was right behind him as well. Both had about 250 receiving yards. It was below average. They didn't really use a tight end, so you can't really blame the players themselves. But when you have minimal production like that, you have to call it how it is. So I gave it a C. Offensive line was a B. They had a little bit of trouble up and down the year, but overall it was above average. So I gave it a B. B is about above average for me. B plus. So I thought that it did pretty good. Cam Dewberry at guard was pretty darn good. He is a new addition. He's a transfer. Caden Proctor at tackle is going to continue to improve. Parker Brailsford at center is going to continue to improve. So I think that that is all very good. Really quick, this evaded my notes, but Tyler Booker was one of the best guards in the country for Alabama. Somehow he evaded my notes. I'm sorry about that. So moving off of the offensive line, we now shift our focus to the defense. For the defensive side, we'll start with coaching. I gave it a B plus. It could again, this Bama team could have been elite. They could have. They had elite players all around. Um, they didn't lose too much, but coaching, I gave a B plus. Again, I thought that they could do a little bit better with what they had. On the defensive line, I gave it a B plus. You had some guys in there like Tim Smith at defensive tackle, who was very good. He was very good at stopping the run. He real big guy. I mean, great at the defensive tackle position. LT Overton at the edge position was pretty good as well. Guys like Tim Keenan the third made an impact with 2.5 sacks. So really, the defensive line they held the line, but the linebackers were really what executed when it mattered most. I gave them an A minus because there wasn't a like one specific guy that was just like an Abdul Carter type of guy where it's he's the it factor. But guys like Jihad Campbell with 5 sacks and 119 total tackles. You can't really get too much better than that. He was elite for them at that middle linebacker position. Guys like Quay Robinson was very good. Deontay Lawson was very good as well, playing the sting position. So the linebackers were excellent for this team. At corner was a very interesting position for this Bama team. They didn't really have a one of one type player. They usually have a very good corners. This year was about a B plus level corner play, in my opinion. Domani Jackson at the left side was very good himself. Zabian Brown on the right side. Those two guys were the outside corners. They did a pretty good job. They weren't okay. They had a couple interceptions, not that much else going for them. Some tackles, all the sun. But really, where they played very well was the safety position. I gave it an A minus. Players like their strong safety Bray Hubbard was elite. He had not elite. He was very good. He was excellent. He had 57 total tackles and 3 interceptions, along with 2 passes defended and a forced fumble. So he was very good at that strong safety position. And then you had Malachi Moore at the free safety position. He was very good as well. A lot of tackles and just was involved in every single play. Keon Sabb got thrown in there as well. So this safety room was very good. Okay, now we go to the overall grades. This will take just a minute here. As you can see now, coaching I gave a B plus overall. Uh, the defense was a bit better than the offense, and I think that Kalen DeBoer had about a B plus, A minus head coaching grade. So I averaged everything together to get a B plus. On the offense, I gave a B, defense A minus, and then special teams was an A minus as well. Special teams I chiefly go off of kicker, and their kicker was very good, Graham Nicholson. He didn't miss a single extra point. His field goal percentage was 80%. He made 8 field goals compared to 10 attempted. So they didn't attempt a whole lot, but he made most of them. So I that edges the team grade up to a B plus, and that's my final team grade for this year. Again, this is probably a top 15 talented team all throughout the year, but we don't base it off of talent like Josh Pate seems to do, but we base it off of the actual results on the field. So seeing the actual results on the field, I gave this team a B plus final grade. Okay, next we will talk about the highs of the season. So the points of the season that I thought were the most outstanding for the Alabama Crimson Tide. So the first one is obviously, as you can see, the emergence of Ryan Williams. Kind of came out of the blue, kind of didn't if you really knew this team. But he was just came out as a top tier wide receiver at the age of 17, which is as impressive as it gets. I mean, he is just a top tier wide receiver, hands down. The emergence of him being there for at least 2 more years, possibly 3, would be is just a huge blessing for the Tide as they keep going down this next stretch of a couple years. And taking down Georgia in week 4, I mean, it was a big one. I mean, you had the now president in office at this game. It was that big. I mean, it was just a huge game, 2 heavyweights colliding, 2 of the top tier programs in college football right now, probably 2 of the top 3 programs right now in college football, right there with Ohio State. So that was a huge game, and beating them was just huge as well. And the top 20 pass defense, I think that they were really good against the pass by metrics. They were, and just overall they were, and it's one of those things where it's like it's better than it even says, because they play in the SEC where everyone runs an air raid style of offense. No one is playing in the Big Ten where it's a ground and pound type of offense, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That's not the SEC. So I think that's even more impressive. And then beating the likes of Missouri at home, LSU at home, and South Carolina at home. Those were 3 pretty darn good wins, even if Missouri was very overrated. Even if LSU did end up going 8-4, 9-4, and even if South Carolina, South Carolina was a very good team. We'll talk about them in a upcoming episode as well. And then obviously beating Auburn in the Iron Bowl for the 4th straight time. Maybe it's 5, I don't even know. But yeah, it was just a great season in terms of beating pretty darn good SEC teams. I mean, really, what had them down? You know what? Let's just go ahead and talk about that. As now we talk about the lows of the season, the lowest points in the season. This one really isn't on there, but a continuation of what we were just talking about. Losing to Oklahoma by 21, losing to Vanderbilt. These games kept you out of being in the college football playoff. It flipped the narrative. I mean, think if they win one of those games that they absolutely should have won. Let's say they beat Oklahoma. Yeah, they still lose to Vandy by 5 points, but let's say they beat Oklahoma. They go into Norman and they do what they're supposed to do. We're looking at a college football playoff team 100%. And who knows what they would have done there, So that was just a continuation of the last segment. The underwhelming losses is the first. Well, yeah, we did talk about that. So we'll go on to the next point. The coaching downgrade for now. I put in parentheses for now, because this is DeBoer's first year. I mean, we talked about this in the opening. DeBoer, everyone wanted to be Nick Saban, and everyone realizes how good Nick Saban was because Kalen DeBoer is actually a really good head coach. He's probably a top 10 head coach, but he's not Nick Saban. Nick Saban can't get you 12 wins every single year. You're going to have a 9-win season. You're going to have an 8-win season with a very good head coach. I mean, you look at all these teams out there. A&M with Mike Elko. Mike Elko, great head coach. Brian Kelly. A lot of people have different opinions of Brian Kelly, but he is considered a top, well, close to the top tier of head coaches. So it's one of those things where it's like you're going to have this up and down cycle. With Saban, it was all up; it was never down. So anyway, I think that it was a downgrade, so it is a low, but for now, meaning that they can get better and they can get a lot better. And then Jalen Milroe I could put Jalen Milroe here and over in the highs of the season because he was so good and he was so bad at the same time. If you know what I'm saying, I think a lot of Bama fans feel the same sentiment that I do. Okay, as we come to the conclusion of this video, I want to remind you guys, if you have liked the video so far, to subscribe to the channel. I don't do any ad reads. I don't yes, put in ads. I don't do anything like that. So that this stays 100% free, and the only way it can continue to remain 100% free is if you subscribe to the channel. All right, the improvements I'm looking for in next season for the Tide, cleaning up against the mid teams. I say it for the third time in this video. Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. Enough said. Quarterback. I think they can definitely improve here. I don't know exactly what the situation is. Forgive me for not being 100% locked in on Bama. I'm trying to cover everything all at once while running about my daily life. So at quarterback, they have Keelan Russell coming in. I know that for certain. And right now on the depth chart, it does have Ty Simpson at quarterback. So maybe a bit of a battle here between Keelan Russell and Ty Simpson. If Keelan Russell starts, that would be very interesting for me, just as like a narrative standpoint, because Bama, you got about five stars on campus. With Nick Saban now. Your only 5-star quarterback is starting as a true freshman, so that's interesting to me if that does happen. But I think if either Simpson or Keelan Russell starts, I think that they can definitely improve in terms of being more consistent. And then general coaching improvements as well. I get it. It was a turnover year. It was a it was a transitional first year. But in the second year here, you really want to start to see some coaching improvements. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. We have so many other videos formatted exactly like this out on the channel right now. We're into double digits at this point. We got the heavy hitters like Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon out there. We have some interesting teams out there that we've covered, like Florida and Nebraska, teams that people have a little bit more of an opinion on. I would classify Bama in this as well. Teams like Illinois, maybe we throw a little bit of Colorado in there. We got much more coming ahead as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.